The first time I met Dr. King was really through a newsreel uh, when I was attending a movie of all places in La Rochelle, France. Dr. King was on the newsreel. I'd never heard of Dr. King, but I was so surprised at this young African American, not very physically large at all, larger than life though. And I thought I'm going to stay in touch with this guy. The next time I met Dr. King was a few years later. This would have been in 1963. By then, I had graduated from college and became a part of a group of people going to the March on Washington in 1963 when Dr. King proclaimed his beautiful vision at the Lincoln Memorial. Something happened there that I even sometimes say that it was sacramental. We were experiencing something much more than the event itself. And that was when Dr. King made his marvelous speech, his I Have a Dream speech. First of all, the crowds of people who were there were from many races. They were from all over the United States of America. They were white, they were black, they were Asian, they were just from everywhere. We were trading lunch, sandwiches with one another. And the very vision that Dr. King was talking about, that's so out of reach, was in fact right there upon us. It's what I think Jesus always meant when he said, the kingdom of God is within you. That is to say, it's not some heavenly place, but when you actually experience the realities of that holiness, of that kingdom. And so we were actually present. And there was something about that moment. This is going to be the focus of my ministry. You know, I was a senior then, just ready to graduate from seminary. I realized that my ministry and my focus was going to be helping to bring the kingdom of God, as Dr. King was talking about it. That was another one of those moments of real change for me in Madhaban, because for the first time, I heard what it really means to consider yourself to be a soul and to remember God. And to remember God in the light of who you are as a soul. Now, I had not done the anatomy of a soul kind of thing that the Brahma Kumaris did. I was exposed to it at Madhuban, as a matter of fact. And I was just hearing it. And of course, I heard Baba speak and so on. And the idea of seeing myself and all human beings as souls, the essence of whom is love and peace. Not that we possess love or possess peace or light, but that's really who we are. I felt like Dr. King did on the last night of his life. He had a premonition, obviously, that this was it. This would have been in April of 1968, of course. He was addressing the crowd, and really his job was to get everybody ready to go out on this march. He said, I have been at the mountaintop. He was referring to Moses going to the mountaintop and seeing the land that he was to lead the people into, or so that they be led into, but that he would not be able to go himself. And Dr. King said, I've seen the mountain. I've been on the mountaintop. I've seen the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, he said, but I've seen the promised land. And there was something about that experience in Madhuban that gave me that same feeling. And it's amazing that it was there that I had that feeling. And I've never left it. And it's one of the things that I most appreciate about the Brahma Kumaris is how you view human reality and who we really are. And Dr. King more than once gave expression to that very thing. I mean, he was not a PK, had probably never heard of the Brahma Kumaris at that time. But in sermons and in writings, even as early as a graduate school paper that I saw not too long ago, where he was actually struggling with the divinity of Jesus and how real that is, and he didn't want to try to defend it. His point was that Jesus was a manifestation of just what I've been talking about. That Jesus was acting out of his soulness in his entire life, and that's exactly the example of what that is intended for all of us. Thinking about what Dr. King taught, he felt that passivity was not the way to address, for example, bad public policy, injustice. He was not a recommender of wait, the time will come and eventually it'll all be all right. For him, it was passive resistance, and not passive waiting, but passive resistance. Having the courage to resist injustice, but having the courage to resist it by coming out of who you really are. That even loving the person or persons or group whose actions you're resisting without doing violence to them. It's my love for you, for me, for all of us, that I resist this unjust issue or whatever it is. I think of how Baba insists on remembering that you're a soul. Remember, just don't forget that. Of all things, keep that in mind, because that's the foundational point. And I think it's true. He saw the connection between injustice. Injustice anywhere is a precursor to injustice everywhere. And so, for example, he became very concerned about the war in Vietnam. And he got a lot of pushback from it, even from his disciples. There was that, Dr. King, you're meddling now. You're getting out of your lane. But he didn't see it that way. First of all, neither of them ran from the truth. And they had to, however they did it, they had to get to where they became. They had to see trouble, either their own or trouble around them. They were able to see the great dangers we are in by our unhappy divisions, as the prayer says. And I think they both did see that. I think they both were obviously courageous. When I read about Brahma Baba and what he had to deal with people resisting him and the whole movement, and yet, there you are, hundreds of you now, thousands of you now. I think, that's obviously a starter. And I think Dr. King didn't stop saying what he felt needed to be said. He led. He carried on and see where it got him. So I think more than probably is yet known, probably more even in terms of spiritual truth. I think there was more. I'm sure that affected me. That I was hearing in Madhuban what I believed I'd been hearing, at the March on Washington, for example. And I think that, and I think there are others. You've heard me say this before, but I think that deep down inside, we all know this truth. And it's people like Dr. King and Brahma Baba who awaken us to what is real, to our real selves. Uh, Baba always talks about remember. In other words, it's not, I'm going to tell you something that you've never heard before, but remember this. Go deep down inside and you're going to know this is true. And that's where your strength is going to come from, because you're going to discover, to rediscover the power that is really yours as a result of that. And I, you know, if I can be a Christian at this point, I think that was the power and the strength of Jesus of Nazareth. I mean, I think it was that the courage that people like that have to be, first of all, to be, the courage to be, and then the courage to therefore I think a word I have not spoken yet, but it was submission. That's what's the same as their mission, their felt mission in the world was to be a part of this awakening. Otherwise, we would have never heard of the BKs. We wouldn't have heard of Christian faith as we heard of it, and we wouldn't have heard of Dr. King, except that this was their mission. But I think in the final analysis, it's when we see ourselves, all of us who inhabit this planet, and all the creatures of this planet, as being inextricably linked by the same love that is a source from which we all flow, and begin to live our lives that way, because that's the way we see it. And then it's not possible to divide and conquer. It's to be together and survive and be sustained. Mm-hmm. However that happens.